Tonight's Canadian look, the Supreme Court, the swing judge, and the holy hand grenade of comedy. Good evening, Canada. Tonight, I want to talk about Bill C-9, or as comedians know it, the bill that says relax right before everyone gets nervous. Because once jokes need permission, the joke is over. So I wrote an email about Bill C-9, not as a lawyer, not as a politician, as a comedian. Because Canadian Canadian comedians are the canary in the coal mine, except louder, ruder, and more likely to be banned from the airlines. And I said, comedy isn't polite conversation, it's controlled disobedience, which is the nicest way I know to say our job is to touch the live wire and see who screams. Now, supporters of Bill C-9 say, relax, it isn't about comedians, which historically is what every censor has said right before banning a comedian. No one except the Canadians, no one expects the Canadian Inquisition. Our chief weapons are ambiguity, good intentions, vibes. Bill C-9 lowers the threshold for what counts as hate. And comedians know what happens when the net widens. You don't catch sharks, you catch dolphins and turtles. Then a guy doing crowd work in Sudbury. Eventually, the ocean files a complaint. Here's the part that made my stomach drop. Andrew Lawton wrote back and said something terrifyingly Canadian. There was a Supreme Court case in Quebec about an offensive comedian. The court upheld the comedian's right to perform. 5-4. One judge, one vibe check, one person deciding whether comedy lives or dies. That's not a legal precedent. That's a coin toss in a robe. And suddenly, I'm thinking about Joan of Arc. Not because I hear voices, but because every time a system says we're just protecting people, someone inconveniently ends up on trial. Joan of Arc wasn't burned because she was wrong. She was burned for being unmanageable, which is also how most Canadian comedians are described in their emails from HR. Now, here's how censorship actually works. No jackboots required. No arrests. No sirens. Just a clipboard. Clubs say they start asking, is this worth the risk? Festivals ask, Will this get us in trouble? And networks ask, can you do the joke, but without the joke? And suddenly comedians and comedy turn into workplace sensitivity training with drink minimums. Nobody laughs. Nobody thinks. Everyone claps politely and goes home unchanged. And yes, this hits me personally because I am openly spiritual and openly a witch. And as history tells us, there's could be something wrong. When societies panic, they don't regulate the powerful, they regulate the strange, the weird, the inconvenient, the woman, the artist, the mouthy ones, the ones that don't know when to shut up. So in the Lost Straits, caring more about how words land than what they mean. That's not safety. That's a vibe-based justice system. And the vibes have terrible aim. Lenny Bruce wasn't arrested because his jokes were dangerous. He was arrested because power hates being laughed at. Carlin wasn't misunderstood. He understood perfectly. That's why they were scared. And finally, I'm not saying Bill C-9 is equal to witch trials. I'm saying I recognize the early symptoms. Vague language, lower thresholds. Trust us. And a Supreme Court that already told us comedy survives by one vote. Which means freedom of expression in Canada is currently protected by a swing judge and a good mood. That's not a charter right. That's a weather forecast. Freedom of expression protects what's uncomfortable or protects nothing. Nobody needs constitutional protection to say something safe. You need it when you make the room go quiet. And once the state decides which jokes are acceptable, you're not watching comedy anymore. You're watching propaganda with a laugh track. But I'm not dead yet. I'm Laura Briggs. This has been a Canadian look, and that's my time.